Remember when I asked you to be my mentor and you said, I can't, you're too much. There's no way I can handle something like that.
I said, I will never, ever go to that country because it has nothing there for me. And never say never, ever. And just don't even do that stuff because you don't know where God's going to take you.
That's what I love about you. You're not going to be just an okay cyclist. You're going to be the elite. Yeah. You are going to be the next level.
It's crazy how the journey has been. It hasn't been easy all the time, but I think that's part of the journey, right?
This is the Unleash Your Purpose podcast.
Welcome back to Unleash Your Purpose podcast with your host, Ryan Centers, post bathroom break. Very glad to have a good friend, mentor, and all around adventurous and great dad, Mr. Charlie Smith.
Oh, thank you, Ryan. That is very, wow. That's quite an opening.
Yes.
Mentor too. Wow.
Yes. Remember when I asked you to be my mentor and you said, I can't, you're too much. There's no way I can handle something like that.
No.
Yeah, you do remember that.
Oh, yeah.
And you don't have to go into the mic and say, check. Can you hear me? No, we can hear you fine.
Okay, that's great.
Yes. So we actually met, we always talk about every time we get together of the good old days. So I was the youth pastor to your son, who is now a pilot, who, Lord help me, he'll be like being my pilot someday. Yeah. I'm not ready for that because I watched him as a young kid and all I see is him as a sixth grader. And now he's transporting 500 people at a time.
Yeah.
But when you were actually one of my volunteers, you and your wife, and did youth ministry with me. And you were one of the few dads that were as extreme as I was. Do you agree with that? Or did I make you extreme? Or
I would say I was extreme, but when I can't level up with you. And we'll get into the stories, but I remember that time when you did the slip and slide and had 4 groups, put a ball in the middle. And you said, Charlie, just like get all the soap out there as much as possible. And I'm like, Ryan, I don't know what your insurance is like here, but this is like broken teeth, broken noses. I'm like,
don't worry about it.
And then Ryan you had people sliding into each other,
it was awesome,
4 at a time to grab a ball. And I was just like, I went back home. I told my wife, Christy, I'm like, he's out of hand sometimes. This is just, he's uncontrollable. I mean, a lot of fun, but like for me as a dad, I'm like,
and now thinking back in the day, you're like, this is, man, dentistry. I have 2 kids who just got on braces. I'm like, this is like $4,000 a kid.
Yeah.
And we had hundreds of kids in our ministry, right? We get them all together. And at first we always just want to have as much fun as possible before we do the lesson, because that's, if you're really going to listen, you got to really just slip and slide into each other. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You definitely connected with the kids and they loved you. And you definitely have a great talent of recruiting quality leaders. I wasn't the only one, but like I think we had a team of about 10 people that were just really
on fire.
Quality. Yes.
Yeah. I think that's almost the best part. Like we had probably one of the biggest ministries at that time, but it was honestly because of the leaders that were there, and we would get meals together, we would have fun and do that mission together. And it was a really kind of a special place, as I think I was the new parent at that point. And Sarah and I were looking to you and your wife for guidance a lot of times, like, man, how the heck do we do this in this parenting thing? And I remember you even watched our kids several times while we went on a little date and break. And so that was a decade or more ago.
Yeah, I would say that got me doing my first mission trip. We went up to Cameron. I don't know if you remember that.
Right. A family mission trip.
Yeah. Up on the Navajo Nation. And we did a VBS, a bouncy. I mean, it was a lot we did in one day. But yeah, that was a really cool time just to minister to those kids and love the kids. And I think that's where I kind of just got the fire started going on. Just loving people outside of my inner circle. Yeah.
So if I remember correctly, we found a village and a school that had on the Indian reservation about 4 hours away. And my big heart is like, I always wanted to have opportunities for families to be able to serve together and create those moments. It's not like, I'm not a big believer that just like, hey, all the kids go over here and let these professionals take care of your kids. No, it's the responsibility is the parents, is the mom, is the dad, to be able to help develop your kids and build that fire together. And when we went up to that went up to that mission trip together. It was an awesome time, and watching you like lead your family in a really cool way. I mean, and so for you, what you're saying is that was a beginning of a kind of a light bulb that turned on for you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Because you were high up, kind of fast forward through some of your life, and where our hearts are now aligned so deeply in the ministry that we get to be a part of. But for you, it's like you were a high up executive level professional in sales and living that life.
Yeah, I did about 27 years of sales and marketing is really where I spent my time. Multiple different, I call it corporate America.
Corporate America, okay.
So I'm used to working in large organizations. My last role, which I actually loved, and it was a great team. Matter of fact, I was talking with somebody that I work with today. It was about $120 million of responsibility in three different organizations, international sales, national accounts, and
were you traveling
sales.
A bunch?
Traveled all the time during COVID.
Yep.
Well, it took off the first 90 days when everybody all of a sudden, where's this neighbor? Where'd he come from? Everybody turns into a runner, a jogger, bike rider. Everybody's walking around their street like zombies. And you're just like, oh man, we got all these neighbors here. You know, it's kind of a weird thing in Phoenix, but yeah.
When you think about that part of your life as a corporate life, what was your picture of success? Because you said you kind of got unlocked as you started serving others, but how would you define, if you can think back to, I don't know, was that 10 years ago at this point? Like a decade ago, how did you define success for you and for your family and what that looked like?
So I think compartmentalize those, but they're all together. First off, from business early on, I just decided that I wanted to create a win-win for the customer, for the people who work with me, for anybody that worked, anybody I was in collaboration with in an organization. Sometimes that spans hundreds of people. So it takes a lot of effort to build relationships, even customers where you're doing really big deals. I feel like if somebody walks away feeling like maybe they left something on the table or they lost a little bit, I think that severs the relationship down the road. Okay. So I'm a relationship person, but I'm also a company person too. I want the organization, meaning I wouldn't just hand somebody money for doing a job unless they did the job well done for the team. Sure.
So when you think of success in regards from your professional side and even life, like you want it to be highly collaborative, relational, or it's a win-win for both sides. If you're kind of taking advantage of somebody else, then that's not the desired outcome.
Exactly.
So but then think about like Charlie's dad as end of life. Like, what is success? Was there like for me, the reason I love thinking about this is because I remember when I was 16 years old, or 18 years old, I worked at Discover Card. I worked as a telemarketer. So I'd call and get balance transfers from people. Do you want to transfer? And I'll give you a 0% for 3 months. Oh, deal. Transfer the money right away. Yeah. And it was all sales. And I learned that I am a pro at sales. Like I could make a balance transfer and my commission checks were really good. But what I watched as myself as a young person is that I could honestly use those sales towards good or to not so great things, not too great of means to an end. Is I could tend to like put too much pressure on people and do things that I was not necessarily like I shouldn't have done. Not that I was being lack of integrity or stuff, but it could have gotten that way. And I remember having to quit probably like 90 days in because I'm like, I don't like this version of myself. And it was honestly, for me, the moment of success when I was there was like how much money I can make, the check I can have, the level I get to, the promotion. And then as I kind of matured as a person through my early career, I've noticed that success to me was status, was a rank, was enough, like making this much money. Oh, wow, if I can make $50,000 a year, that was like, oh, we were killing it. And now it's like my definition of a success is not that. It's like transitioned. And I've watched you, that kind of shift in your mind quite a bit in this last probably decade.
Yeah. I think, you bring up, you just unpacked a lot of stuff right there.
Yeah.
I could dive in on, if you don't believe in your product.
Yeah.
And I've been in situations like that when I was younger. I'm a person that's enthusiastic, passionate, just like you.
Yeah.
Bring the energy every day. I'm 55 years old.
Yeah.
I still have the energy and excitement. If you don't have that, you need to quit your job immediately.
Yeah.
Go straight to or find a place in the organization that's the right fit. If I've ever let anybody off, like, hey, you need to move on, or move on in the organization or where it is.
Yep.
I always looked at that as being honest with them and getting them in the right position for themselves. So I think that's about, sometimes doing the hard thing in your gut is the right thing.
Yes.
And people need to be more honest and transparent in our society in general to build trust and do it the right way.
Yeah.
I think myself, personally, from a personal standpoint, and you probably realize this, I'm a very strategic person. When I commit to something, I commit to it. So for instance, I did Crown Ministries with Christy, my wife, probably over 20, 25, 27 years ago. I still utilize those principles today. It's like
financial management kind of
financial management.
Yep.
Yeah. Dave Ramsey's kind of commercialized Crown Ministries, but a lot of those principles today. And I just set that in as like a pillar of who I am. I'm a minimalist, big time. I try to minimize distraction personally so I can serve and do the things that are important to me.
Yeah.
And then I can also be a really good steward to the organization I work for. I'm a team person first.
Yep.
I'm an Enneagram 3, which is very unusual that they would be a team person.
What's the Enneagram 3?
That's a performer.
Okay.
And I've had a lot of salespeople work for me that are full-on performers. Like you said, all they did is care about themselves, making the money and all that stuff. I said, hey, it's about the team, whatever. They just can't even compute that. But I'm also a 2-wing, which is a helper. Yeah. So I have that helper side in me.
Sure.
And I think that's where the team collaboration piece has always been very important to me.
Okay. That's interesting. When we were doing youth ministry together, you were on the beginning of a journey for me of where God started to break my heart for the least of these, for these orphans that were in India. And we were part of a church that was part of it, that helped out an organization. And just so people know, we're not going to actually name the organization just because of confidentiality and just for the needs of the ministry of the work they're doing. There tends to be a lot of hostility in India and political unrest in ways that is wrong. Yeah. And we want to make sure we protect that organization and the work that they're doing that we're both so committed to. But I remember when you and I were working in that ministry, or we were doing youth ministry together, I went on a mission trip to India. And I was with these kids, and it was just like my life became unglued. And I think when I came back, and there was like probably 2 stories, like one of the most profound stories was we went into a village, and it was a bunch of these orphan kids like my kids' age, 5, 6 years old, no parents in sight. And they sit and they line up in a line to get their food from this organization. And the food that they give is a banana, an egg, and a roll. Those 3 things. And you get up in a line, and we're looking at the front, and they have these stacks of eggs and stacks of bananas, and they go and walk, and we're passing out, and the kids are so excited. They're singing songs. They're getting their nutrition for the day. But I think the hardest part for me was at the end, we look at my bowl of eggs, and I look up forward, and there's no eggs left. And what I have left is 15 eggs, and there's a line of 40 kids. And I'm passing it out, and then the kids in the line notice that it's running out, and then mass mayhem breaks out, and the kids are like reaching and grabbing, and I have to hold this little thing of food over there in my head. And I'm like, this is not right. Like, no kid should ever have to go without enough. And I have so much, and I could easily have, if I was in the US, bring more eggs. And these kids were just starving, not just for like relational connection, but actual physical food. And for me, coming from the US, where it's more than enough, when we're overwhelmed back in 2006 with Chinese buffets for $6.99, and like I'm walking with these kids that have nothing, and or working with these people who are sitting on the floor with no hands because they have ancient leprosy, which is still a thing, but they're clapping with their hands that aren't even hands, and they're worshiping God. And like, wow. Yeah. That rocked my world. Like, they are experiencing something that I can't even imagine. They have peace and joy where I have discontent and want more. And for me, that was like a beginning of like, I came back to the US and I was with you, and I was like, I was living in an alternate reality. It's like what I saw and experienced and what I have here. And it was the beginning where I needed to like run, like beginning of the end, honestly, where I needed to like go and like be with the least of these, be with those who are, because I came back and I said, if Jesus, this is probably overly melodramatic, and those who aren't Christian may not get this, but like I was thinking, if Jesus ever came back and I'm walking around Phoenix, would he even recognize me? Because where Jesus is, he's with the least of these. He's with the orphan and the widow. And like, if I look at my life, I'm like, I'm just with a bunch of comfortable suburban white people that don't have like, and wouldn't even recognize me. So it was the beginning of the end where I ended up going and planting our ministry that we have now. And I remember for you, you were kind of in the middle of that. And then a couple years ago, 5 years ago, I saw you at Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, it was like 5 or 6 years ago.
I got all my kids.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to go enjoy my lunch.
You're just doing your thing. And I remember I was sitting by myself.
Yeah.
And you
who
sat down
goes
like
to
right
Chick-fil-A
in front
by
of me.
themselves?
I don't know. It was
That's
kind
a
of
meal
weird.
to be shared.
I have no idea. I have no idea, but it was a Saturday and it was crazy in that Chick-fil-A.
Yes, I know. And then you see this depressed guy in the corner eating his sandwich.
He wasn't in the corner.
You were in the corner with your bottle of water because you're so healthy, and a grilled chicken sandwich.
I forgot where it was.
Yeah, I'll like the apple slices. I'm like, give me the fries, guy.
No, but it was really ironic because I was like, you of all people, because you were the one that talked the most about India.
Yep.
And to step back, when you were on fire with India, I remember sitting in the audience and saying to myself, and then I leaned over to Christy, I said, I will never, ever go to that country because it has nothing there for me. And never say never, ever. And just don't even do that stuff because you don't know where God's going to take you. That's my first thing I want you to know. So that was full on. And then now I'm like totally into it. But I was wrecked then. Matter of fact.
You were wrecked, not by my inspiring speech, but you were wrecked at what?
Yeah, I think when I came back, it was like a week back where everything, my world
We're sitting
was,
at Chick-fil-A, and it's a week after coming back from India.
Yeah, and you knew you could. I didn't have to say anything. You looked at my face.
I could see that Indian grin all over you.
Well, it wasn't an Indian grin. It was a grin of, what am I doing in this Chick-fil-A? Like, sucking down, a chicken sandwich. But yeah, it was, at that time, I was just like, Ryan, Sarah, I'm like, I'm messed up. I was literally messed up. I've heard it takes about 90 days. Some people, it depends if they're coming there to listen and understand what God's teaching them.
Yep.
And that's the posture I went there with. I didn't come there with a posture with my own agenda or whatever. I came there like, God, tell me, like, show me, like that open posture. And then I came back totally messed up. Matter of fact, I went to a church that Sunday, the next day, and people at the end of the service, people are walking out. This is a totally different church. I don't think you know who they are, but people start walking out where the last song is being sung. And my son and my wife are like bookending me, and I just start weeping. And then I'm just like sobbing. And then I walk outside, and then Christy looks at me and she's like, what's up with you? I'm like, people were walking out. That's all I could say. And we went to the car, and my son's like, what's going on? My father's just totally falling apart over here. Yeah. And I don't know if Christy called you guys like, hey, he's really messed up. And you said, hey, give him 90 days so he'll come back to earth. But I got into that groove. Like, it was October when it was like, no Christmas gifts, give to the board. Yeah. You
go crazy.
You go to the extreme.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that happened to me. And then I finally, after 90 days, came back to like, okay, my culture, how do I take what God has shown me? And then how do I move forward? And I basically just went out and did what I did. And I just put together a sales pitch and went to churches, went to friends, and just started talking about the organization. And some of them supported the organization. Some of them support the organization to this day. But I just kind of, sometimes when you go back, it's like, what are you going to do with that? Well, I was like, I'm going to do what I've always done in the business world. I'm just going to go out and tell people. Yeah. And, if they respond, that's fine. But it's a great organization. It's a great one to get involved with. And not everybody's going to go to these far off places in the world. No. But we can all do something locally. So I would encourage people just to get out and do something locally. I'm part of a small serve group here in the Valley. But yeah, train wreck.
Your train wreck? And your train wreck has continued on to now you like left your career.
Yes.
I mean, the train was going fast, no man. Like, that's what I love about you. You're not going to be just an okay cyclist. You're going to be the elite. Yeah. You are going to be the next level. I'm going to be the top salesman in the nation. And I am going to now quit my job and be the board, to serve in a big capacity, and now change your whole life and now go into full-time ministry.
Yeah.
What because the thing that you said that you would never do, looking at me, you're like, that's horrible.
No, yeah.
What freak show would do something like that?
And I know you have a similar path, right? That you could talk about all day long about your deal. But it's crazy how the journey has been. It hasn't been easy all the time. Yeah. But I think that's part of the journey, right? Yeah. Serving people is not easy. 2 years ago, coming back from COVID, I was in India, and I was sitting there and I was like, Christy said something, and then I said something, and she goes, well, that's ministry. And I said, I didn't sign up for ministry. I'm like, I'm in ministry. And I said, I didn't sign up. I thought I was a corporate guy coming in just to provide some leadership
and quarterback
and kind of do what I've always done. And then this past trip, I was there, and we were out in the middle of nowhere. As you know, you can get out into some really remote areas, and serving people out there. It was a very tough area.
Very tough.
Very tough. And all of a sudden, I felt like God was saying, well, that's being a missionary. And I was like, no. I'm like, I didn't sign up for that. Like, so it's like, so I'm kind of battling with this journey that I'm being led down, that I don't even know I'm being led down. Like, strategy, no strategy. Like, I just jumped in. It's interesting how we look at people, and I would say you're an extremist.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Right. I would look at you and say, Ryan, he's this much more extreme than I. Yeah. But in my own right, I consider myself an extremist in the things that I'm really committed to as well.
Because you jump. I mean, well, and maybe the extremist, but like, you have this radical obedience. Like, you've stepped out in faith. You're like, I knew something in myself. And for those people who may not have a sense of faith, but like, they have a sense of purpose and a calling and a deep part within them that is something more. And there's so much fear there. Like, what is going to happen? Mm-hmm. What if this happens? I don't know how that's going to work out. What are my friends going to say? What is my family going to do? Am I going to get disowned? Is this not going to work? Am I going to be a failure? You say all the things. And most of those questions keep people hostage. And it's like they come paralyzed with this chance to move forward. But then there are people like you that for some reason say, all the naysaying in my head, shut up. I have to step out, and I have this radical obedience. And I imagine, like you have, like I have, it's hard because I don't have a plan full all the time, but there's an immense amount of peace. And it's like immense amount of like my soul is at rest. My soul is like content in a way that I didn't experience elsewhere.
Yeah, I think you're a little bit further down the path kind of than I am in this, let's call it the nonprofit world.
Yep.
Right. And your journey is a little bit different than mine. I need to call you more. That you just spoke some words of life into me, in encouragement, which when you're doing this, you need that. I think in fellowship, that is critical.
Yeah.
One of the things I knew I needed right out of the get-go is a mentor.
Yeah.
You know, you got to humble yourself and say, I need a mentor. And by the grace of God, somebody who's been doing what I've been doing for 30 years. He's actually a Messianic Jew, really great guy. And he just, the way he looks at the world is totally different. And I meet with him every Monday at the same time, 30 minutes on the phone. We grab coffee sometimes. He's not in the state. He's out of the state. But if you're going to jump into this world, I think mentorship is so important. It's much more important than going to, like, let's say a leadership summit.
Yep.
A leadership summits, they might get you rah-rahed up. And that's another thing. There's so much talk about leadership, but in this world, but it's having somebody that will invest in you.
Yeah, come alongside
you is so critical.
Like grieve and like this sucks. Like yesterday I was talking to another guy who is a business owner, has a social service agency similar that I love deeply, and he's just a wounded warrior. And sometimes you're just like, man, this is tough. And just being able to share that, but then say, hey, do you know what you're doing right now? You're changing 6 guys' lives.
Yeah.
Like, and he's like, I'm like, these guys' lives are better, and you're giving them dignity. And he's like, dude, you don't even know I needed that so bad. I'm like, we all need that.
Yeah.
We all need that.
Yeah, totally. I think it's important also to have a network of people that you can just pick up the phone and encourage you. One of my first jobs, I used to do cold calls, physical, small to medium-sized businesses, knocking on doors, trying to get to the key decision maker, that type of stuff back in the day. And one thing that I learned, that if you're going to survive that type of sales with so much rejection, is at the end of the day, you need to go to a customer and go just hang out with people that you like.
Yep.
And then it charges your batteries. I don't know why I did this.
Yeah.
And then you wake up the next day and then you get punched in the face again, and you do 50 cold calls, and maybe, 2 people set appointments.
Yeah.
I mean, physical cold calls, you're face to face, right?
Yeah.
But people speaking into your life is very, very important.
Totally is.
That is critical. That's almost like put the box up there, call 5 people a week that can speak into you, and ask them. Yeah. Like, humble yourself.
Yeah. Yep. Like when I asked you to be my mentor and you said no.
I think he's lying there.
Oh, yeah. Oh, the tables have turned.
I would never say no.
Hey, fellow purpose-driven leaders. If you're loving what you're hearing, we need your help to keep spreading inspiration so others can unleash their purpose too. If you're finding value in our discussions about purpose, entrepreneurship, faith, and family, here's how you can support us. First off, hit that subscribe button right now to make sure you never miss an episode. By subscribing, you'll get notified every time we release a new podcast packed with wisdom and encouragement. Next, take a moment to share this episode with your friends, family, and followers. Whether it's a text message, a post, or a shout out, your recommendation helps us reach more people who are seeking inspiration on their journey. And finally, if you've been enjoying our podcast, we'd be incredibly grateful if you could leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your reviews not only motivate us to keep creating great content, but they also help others discover our show and join our purpose-driven community. So let's keep the momentum going. Subscribe, share, and review the Unleash Your Purpose podcast today, and together, let's make a positive impact on the world, one listener at a time. Now let's dive back into today's episode.
India like has such part of our heart. The Indian food is amazing. The bathrooms are not so much.
No,
they are not.
no staring at your cell phone. You're not spending any time.
No, you are not. No. You are halfway across the world, 30 hours of travel. And what are some of the most different cultural things that you still haven't gotten used to? Maybe you
oh man, that's a winger question.
I have mine. So
cultural, like
there's just something crazy down there that's like people who've never been to India. It's its own culture in and of itself. And it's like,
India has the largest English speaking or second largest English speaking population in the world. 300 million people behind the United States. A lot of people don't understand that. But one of the difficult things is yes means 5 different things. There's yes with intention, which could be 6 months later. There's all these things that in our society that when people's talking to you just, So
and this shaking
that means
What does this mean?
That
yes,
means
I really
yes.
like it.
That means yes.
So if you see
that's more of a South India thing. Up North India, they don't do that. Then there's a lot of subcultures and 27 different languages and
the only culture that I've been to is that part of it in India, and what I wasn't prepared for was the amount of affection that men give other men.
Oh, yeah.
That's like a term of not just endearment, but it's like a brotherhood to the next level. So I remember we walked down in these villages, remote areas, and all of a sudden I'm just walking, and some Indian guy next to me that I have not met grabs my arm, and we were gonna link up, like we're gonna walk together, or he'll grab my arm and just hold on to me, or hold hands.
Yes.
Then as the days and weeks have progressed, it wasn't just this; it was now interlocking with these other guys. And the best part to me, which was a little awkward, would we sit in the back of this truck, and we are with all the other people involved in the ministry, and culturally, like everyone sits very close to each other. Like there is space on one side of the vehicle, but we are all very tight. And I have this big guy next to me who wants to sit next to me, and he's holding my hand while we're sitting driving. Then as time goes on, I have a tear in my jean, and he notices that I have a tear. So he takes his finger and then starts swooping his finger in my leg hair.
Oh, by the way, a tear in the jean's not good. In India. Yeah.
Well, maybe he was like, this is weird, the tear in the jeans, but look at my finger. It's a perfect placement for my finger swooping. And I'm like, where in the heck are we right now? And it was just a different, what I think is so funny and is like cultures are different, and you just learn how to just be one with the people, and it's just the funny moments and crazy. And if you had a hole in your jeans, maybe I'd come in for a quick swoop.
Yeah, I hold hands with men in India.
Do you? Why?
But it's only it typically for somebody that I've been there and know really well, and you probably know some of these people that are really, just incredible people. These are people just living it out, like in the grind every day in a really tough situation. But yeah, I don't know if that was your second time or first time, but what that shows me is that they really like you.
Not second or third time,
like in their culture, we talk about quality time. That's not how their culture works. Their culture is just about time. So I don't know if you remember, one of the things people have time with, why are we just sitting here and talking? Or we're just spending time together. Like we're not doing anything. We're just spending time together. To them, that's quality time. For people from the West, they might be like, when are we going to go someplace? What are we doing? Where's my cell phone? Whatever, all that type of stuff. But yeah, I think it's very important to, what I've learned is get out of your comfort zone and go to as many cultures as you can and just be open about what you're seeing. And I think if more people did that in the United States right now, we would have a different culture. it would be a culture of compassion towards people versus attacking people based on what your belief system is. We don't need any more of attacking people.
Yeah.
We need to love people. I mean, I'm a Jesus follower. I mean, that's what Jesus did.
Yep.
He just loved people.
Exactly.
If you love people and you're getting attacked, then all right, go to the next village. Jesus said, shake the dust off your shoes and go.
Exactly. And it's like almost like, at least the parts of India that I've been to, and I've been 3 separate times, is you go to these villages and it's remote. I mean, you're driving 4 or 5 hours, and the way we have a children's home that we have the honor of being support and take care of, and it's about 30 kids.
Yes.
And it's literally, our podcast room is the size of the orphanage. I walked in, it's like, it's their church, it's the orphanage, it's everything. And these kids who would be Dalits, is that the right word?
Yeah.
Dalits?
Yeah.
Dalits.
Yeah. Untouchables.
The untouchables. So in the Hindu culture, there's a caste system. They're the lowest run in the Hindu culture. That they deserve what they get within that caste, and they have to work their way up to get higher. So these kids are part of that caste system. They can't go to school. They're working in rice fields, running just amok, and it's just, or eating out of trash and it's horrible. So this children's home takes care of these 30 kids and gets them education, school, feeds them, helps them learn about life and faith, and it's life-changing. And I had the privilege of going to my children's home several times and watching these kids grow up, and how honored the pastor and their leaders were to be a part of this ministry, and watch the impact that something that is a financial, not even like a financial, is part of our giving plan and our generosity plan, but like, it's way more of a blessing for us than it is for them, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. And you live that out here, which is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Shalom to you and your family and Sarah. Last time I was there, I was in a children's home, an orphanage, and God like put on my heart, like, it's like, you see the Bible in action, like you see love in action. And I had this thing, like, everybody comes there and they want to change the group, hey, give them beds, do this, do that, or whatever. But you realize that if these kids just have food, shelter, clothing, one set of clothes, whatever, 2 sets of clothes, and love, they have this love from the people in the organization. So it could be the elderly home next door that comes over and loves on the kids. It could be the person leading there. It could be, older children's in there. If kids feel that love, it changes everything.
That's right.
And there's kids that come from very typical, these are kids that come from tough backgrounds.
Yeah.
Probably the same thing that you deal with. Yeah. But love is the only thing that can break through any of that stuff. No materialism, none of that stuff is going to do anything. That's the love of Jesus Christ.
That's right.
Quite frankly.
Yeah. And now you're like this bold ambassador for the Lord, as you're like this nonprofit leader and making it happen and being able to speak that's been an overarching kind of narrative that has been building in your life, at least like for me as a friend and as watching it happen. You're bolder and clearer. And I remember you were highly strategic back in the day, and you would pray for me. It's like very like, Lord God, thank you for this day. Bless my friend. Amen. Now you got all this Indian in you, and it's like,
I can take my matcha and get the good vibes going. And stick with it.
I'll take your Holy Spirit prayer all day.
Yeah, I love. I think what I learned even in my corporate career, is I started as I was in this like 3-year journey before I moved over. And started doing this for a living. I started like seeing things in people, and I felt like the Holy Spirit was like, pray for them.
Yeah.
It's so countercultural.
Yeah.
That you just like, man, that's really tough. You're walking out of a parking lot out of Starbucks. You're going to another sales call and say, can I pray for you? I never had anybody ever say no.
You would go out and ask.
Yeah, just go out. I think
because sometimes I get those feelings. I'm like, I'll pray for him in my head.
Yeah.
But you're like, I'm going to go out there and do it.
Yeah, I think there's a boldness to that, but I think it's considerate. You ask them for permission.
Yes.
I think it's very considerate. Now I'm finding myself, if somebody's talking, right, and I'm in a mentoring, or like I have some value to give to somebody. Sure. They're going through a divorce, whatever it may be. I always say, do you mind if I can talk into or speak into what you just said?
Yeah.
Will you give me, sometimes I say just right out, because I'm a direct person. I'm like, will you give me permission to tell you what I think you need to hear?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And you can, if you don't want to hear anymore, tell me. But, if, I think there's something to that. We should be asking people, like, I'm feeling like led here not to tell you something. I'm feeling like the Spirit, or even if you're not a follower of Christ, right? In a charitable, non-offensive way, don't tell people what to do. Nobody's going to listen to that.
Yeah.
Invite them in.
Yeah. Yeah. That's good. And that's like that's a powerful way to show love. Like your life, like what I would say is, like, as we kind of finish up for today, like when you think of success, you wanted to make sure both sides were winning, and probably had, and now how would you define what success is for you personally and for your kids? What is success?
So I was having this conversation not around this, but I just want to piggyback on what you're saying. I think right now, success for me in this period of time is understanding of providing a win sacrifice. So instead of a win-win, like I'm getting something from you by being here, right? It's the mentality that I want you to win, but I'm willing to sacrifice my time.
Yes.
Like, you want to go have coffee? I'm super busy. I need to do this stuff. You take the time to do that.
Yeah.
Right. It's it's a struggle for me.
To be the sacrifice side?
The win sacrifice. So instead of a win-win, this is a win for me. I'm going over here. I like this coffee shop or whatever.
So it's choosing to
I know that's minimalist, meeting somebody for coffee, but it's an analogy I'm saying. It's like, hey, I want to provide a win for them. I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
But it needs to be done, so I'm willing to sacrifice. And it's more of that sacrificial spirit that is grinding in me, Ryan, right now.
Because you don't want to do it.
Yes, it's a struggle. It's my inner struggle, right? So that, like, I was telling my kids this, like, there's 3 things you need to know about the world and how it works. There's the battle of good and evil. There's the spiritual battle.
Sure.
Right? There's the world, or I like to say culture, that will suck you in. And then there's your own self-centeredness. It's how you deal with stuff.
So for you, the self-centeredness is
it's a self-centeredness in a culture that values speed. It values self-gratification.
Yeah.
Right. And it doesn't, people don't clap for people that are serving. Matter of fact, there's people doing crazy stuff all around the world. You know, some of them.
Yeah.
You will never know their names. You will never, ever know their names. And like, when I hear some of these stories about other organizations that are freeing people in sex trafficking or slavery, making whatever products, or just people doing incredible things that you would never, ever hear their names. Like, I walk out of the room and I'm like, Christy, I just had this conversation. It's amazing.
So you're trying to come to say, like, the impact that I'm making, the success that I have may not be seen. It may be sacrificial. It may not be convenient for me, but that's the stuff that matters the most.
That would make me sensitive, and on a podcast, I'm going to say no.
No, I would say you're talking to a psychologist.
Yeah. I like how you sum that up. Yes, that's a struggle. for me. And
it's just learning.
chiseling.
It's chiseling, yeah. And you're like refining, like it's like the diamond is constantly being chipped away. And our life is just, that is our life, is that we are constantly being grinded and refined to make more of that impact, to do what God wants you to do.
Yeah. Do you ever feel like you want to scream out and say,
Heck yeah.
no mas, no more? Like,
Yes,
hey,
this
can we
morning.
just stop right here?
This morning.
I'm good right here. I've served
I just was
a ton.
Yeah. We had 9 kids in this house. We had to have people coming in doing visits for their case managers and all this stuff and in our life. And the kids and it just gets old. And I'm just tired, but it's like the call. It's like the call and the purpose is, like it's told like Galatians 3, it's like, or 6:3, it's like, do not become weary in doing good, for you will reap a harvest if you do not give up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like very easy to overlook that, but I'm like, the weariness is real.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm actually having to learn right now is I have to have rhythms where it's okay to be selfish, to be refilled, meaning not like from but there's moments I have to retreat, to reset. My family needs to reset, to be refreshed, to have moments of connection, so then I can continue to pour out in the mission.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so much grinding. It's like a rock. It's like this grind and this hustle culture of grind. Guess what happens to that rock? It's going to be dust. And nonprofit leaders can have a very bad tendency to grind themselves to dust.
Mm-hmm.
And that will end up destroying you.
Mm-hmm.
Because the work that you're doing matters. And the wins are not always so out there for everyone to see.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
They're spiritual. They're intangibles. There's not a number attached, but there's a life attached.
Yeah. Can I go a little overtime on what you're saying? I was talking to somebody yesterday, and he was saying he's involved with a lot of stuff in Israel right now, what's going on. And I said, hey man, how can I pray for you, your organization, so forth? He's like, they're just weary. He said, all these people that are serving people, like when war comes in and people flock there, I think that's not actually a war, but when that conflict started, we're like 90, 100 days in, and the adrenaline wears off. Yeah. And you become like what you're saying, this weariness sets in. You're like, my expectations were this is going to be over in 90 days. Yeah. I don't know when this is going to be over. Yeah. The people in Ukraine, it's been like 2 years. Yeah. You got to think they're in overtime stress, weariness. But you said that word and it just struck me. Like when you're doing the Lord's, like when you're doing good work, you're doing the Lord's work. Sometimes there's a weariness to that. And I think that starts back to where we started, is like the encouragement, like in the sacrifice is important for leaders. Yeah. If I told him, I said, if you feel the Spirit is leading you to get on a plane tomorrow and sacrifice your son's last year of baseball in college, your wife, all these sacrifices so you can inspire them. Yeah. I said, you need to do it. Yeah. Well, with your wife's permission, of course. But but you know what you know what I'm saying is like, because that's the call. Yeah. The call is when people are weary, somebody needs to show up. Yeah. Put your big pants on, you got to show up. And then the weariness, but having moments to reset is important, but then acknowledging that there is a thing of weariness. Yes. And then there are moments where you just got to, I don't know, push through it, or I call it grinding. Grinding to the end of nothing. Yeah. I just my daughter has it. My son has it. My wife has it. I've always had it. I just call it grinding out. I tell my kids that they know exactly what it is. Yeah. It means it sucks. Things suck. You got to keep your head down. Yeah. You got to keep grinding along. Yeah. It's a level of discipline. And there's people in high performers and highly successful people understand the grind out. It's like high level of discipline. I'm gonna push through the suck. And when I push through the suck, eventually I'm gonna be on the other side of the storm. But I got to learn to push through. Yeah. If the storm's 4 years, that's when you get super weary. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, how do you persist through the storm when the storm is so long?
Yeah.
How about that's for the next podcast?
Well, God bless you, brother, man.
Can you, come back and visit us?
Yeah, I'd love to. I mean, I had all these notes prepared.
Oh,
Ryan.
dude, he had his glasses on. He's like, I got dude, no, we're just going to talk.
Get to my notes. I got my copious notes. I'm like spitting them out, sitting over here. Didn't even get into like what it was like from shifting from the business world to a nonprofit world. Like we should probably have another.
Let's do that.
Just on that.
Yeah.
Because if there's somebody out there thinking that, they need to hear that conversation.
And the tactical steps of doing that. So we'll get that scheduled and make it happen. But for those of you guys who finish this episode, make sure you go down below, click that subscribe button, share it with your friends. Until next week, may you unleash your podcast, unleash your purpose by listening to this podcast to profit in business, faith, and life.
Thanks for joining us for the Unleash Your Purpose podcast. Be sure to subscribe, and leave a review. We'll see you next week.